Greetings everyone, and today we have another deck tech. Today we're doing something I mentioned last week in one of my videos, my first ever Frontier deck tech. Now do keep in mind, since this format is brand spanking new, I'm going to be doing a deck that I don't really have a whole lot of experience playing, but I have tested it a little bit, but I haven't taken it to any sanctioned Frontier events because there really aren't any. Like I said, this deck is brand new. I made it probably last week, probably a little before I made that last video I did about Frontier. So I figured I'd share it all with you. And the reason I want to share this deck with you is because I've been looking at some deck lists for Frontier, and honestly, a list like this hasn't really come up, and I'm kind of surprised that it isn't. And also, this is actually one of my favorite archetypes in Magic ever. I probably have done a deck tech similar to this for, I think, Modern and Standard. But I like to do one for Frontier because Mono Red is, well, arguably, like I said, one of my favorite archetypes. Probably the first deck I played in Legacy when it was still called Format 1.5 or Type 1.5 back when I first started playing Magic back in the day. That was probably one of my favorite decks to play at that time, and it kind of stuck with me ever since. So I usually will have some sort of burn deck. However, this is Frontier. Unlike Legacy or Modern, you're not going to have the option to run 12 to 20 lightning bolt-like effects. In short, no 3 damage for 1 mana. However, there are some pretty formidable cards in this format, and considering I feel like Frontier has a lot of decks with mana bases that are pretty greedy and do require a lot of coming to play tap lands, I feel like a deck like this can really thrive. Starting off with our creature package of the deck, everything in this deck, or every creature at least, is designed to get bigger over the course of the game, whether it be just minimal +1/+1 or a lot more, considering 3 of the 4 sets of creatures we run in the main deck have prowess. Starting off at the top of the left there, you have the classic Monastery Swift Spear, a card I honestly, despite browsing several lists in Frontier, have not come across. It will usually often be a 2-3 or sometimes even a 3-4 late game. Going to its right, we have the Village Messenger. Considering, like I say, there are a lot of decks in this format that don't really have turn 1 plays or will have a tapped land turn 1, it's likely going to be flipping. And below the other 2 prowess creatures, Majoring Bully, I feel like is a really underrated creature, basically probably the best Mog Flunky you'll ever play. And next to it, it's the Abbot of the Kralkeep, which did see a little play in Modern, although it was very, very moderate. And it was actually back when Probe was still legal. Makes for a great card. I think it's better late game when you have mana to do or use the effect, get the card off its effect, but overall, all these cards are solid. And considering we run a lot of non-creature spells, you're going to get some prowess triggers, regardless of what prowess creature you are going to be drawing. Moving on to our straight-up burn package, just cards that just hit our opponent in the face, we're looking at some pretty awesome burn spells, and some that have seen some play across all formats. Starting at the top left, we have the slightly better shock in the form of Wild Slash, although you probably won't be getting that Ferocious. The Ferocious usually isn't super relevant because we're mainly just trying to get shock, so I guess more often than not, if you don't have Wild Slash, you could probably replace it with shock and get away with it. Being released in M15, we have the opportunity to use Lightning Strike, which is really bad Lightning Bolt for 1 extra mana. However, if you know you come across, what do they call it, Hangerback Walkers or anything else that gets value upon dying or something like that, you may be better off running Incendiary Flow just to counter that trigger ability. One problem with this deck is that sometimes we can come across creatures with really large butts. In that case, we can give our creatures a break from attack. You can use them to cast Stoke the Flames, which is on the bottom left there. It's an instant, so you can do it whenever the heck you like. Phenomenal card for a deck like this, considering I feel like late game we are going to be running out of gas. Probably towards the end when we just need to do those last few points of damage that we need to knock out our opponent. Continuing with the theme of 4 damage, we have the Exquisite Firecraft. Wonderful card. It is a sorcery, but that spell mastery is wonderful, especially if we're going up against something like Control or Tempo or anything that uses blue for that matter. And speaking of running out of gas, we do have the Collective Defiance, which if we don't have any real super awesome draws, we can pay a little extra mana, pitch our cards, and draw some new ones, which are hopefully a bit more exciting. Ultimately, it also has the potential to be kind of like a Searing Blaze for a lot of mana, but it can kill some creatures with some pretty large butts. For toughness creatures have historically been kind of tricky for red decks to deal with. So having cards like Stoke the Flames, Exquisite Firecraft, and Collective Defiance are all really nice to have. There probably is a better alternative for this next card, but I'm personally a really huge fan of Infectious Bloodlust. Unfortunately, it's not super great against decks with a lot of removal if they get ahead of you or have some mana while you cast it. But if you do get one out, you're going to get a little more, I guess you could say, card advantage upon your creature dying, or at least it will get you a little extra value upon dying. I don't run it at the moment, but I probably should run this, considering it was released in Origins. Titan Strength is a marvelous card for this deck. I feel like it's arguably considering the closest thing Frontier has to a Lightning Bolt. The only catch is you have to get a creature in unblocked. It's just a shame because my copies of Titan Strength are taking a vacation to Bermuda and won't be coming back until March. The mana base for this deck is painfully simple and inexpensive. It's 20 of these. I guess if you want to, you could add an extra one if you feel like you're getting a little scrubbed on mana whenever you play. But I feel like this is nice because while you always will be able to cast your spells on turn 1, your opponent will be crying when his lands come into play tapped, and you're getting the edge on him in the damage race. Since this format and deck are new, there are several things we could add for our sideboard. Of course, like I say, there are several options, but here's just a couple I like for the current meta. Since there are a lot of artifacts, both from Kaladesh and a few other sets that are pretty common, I feel like Smash to Smithereens is a wonderful alternative to some burn spells and some matchups. Getting rid of a permanent and dealing damage is huge. Since there are a lot of sets with really large creatures, hint hint Eldrazi, I feel like Active Treason will be really nice. If there are any decks that do have a goal of ramping or getting out one large creature, Active Treason is the way to go, simply because you can take that creature and beat your opponent to death with it. And also, considering Siege Rhinos are actually quite popular, I've seen a lot of lists that want Siege Rhinos. I feel like Roasty Toasty on the far right there seems like a good removal spell just to get rid of them and have your brigade of tiny red creatures attack, plus it triggers all the prowess. In fact, all these spells trigger prowess as well. Like I say, if another option that you can run is if you go up against Hangerback Walkers. In addition to Smash, you could also run Incendiary Flow for sideboard and run something else. Like I said, the Titan Strength could also be a good option for main deck and run Incendiary Flow or Lightning Strike or whatever you want on the sideboard. Depending on your meta, if you want to try this deck, you can also run some crazy things like Phyrexian Revoker if you come across some nasty activated abilities or cards with activated abilities. One important thing to note is Phyrexian Revoker is not a Pithing Needle, so don't think about trying to knock out your opponent's activated abilities on lands. It doesn't do that, so your opponent's man lands will still walk all over you even if you have a Phyrexian Revoker. For games that go late, a couple of nice cards would be, for starters, the Bedlam Reveler. You do run a lot of non-creature spells, mainly instants and sorceries, so getting this down to a pretty low mana cost, I think on average it's going to probably be about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 at most, but when you're out of gas and you're have a lot of lands and nothing to do them with, this is just a wonderful card. Just getting an extra 3 cards for probably just pitching something you didn't want or maybe an extra land that you don't need is still really nice. Another fantastic card I feel for the sideboard against, I guess, slower matchups or matchups that tend to grind you to death is Chandra, the Torch of Defiance. Just a hard permanent answer. I feel like Planeswalkers, although this format is very diverse and there are actually some removal spells for Planeswalkers, I feel like Chandra's kind of an unexpected thing for a deck like this, considering the deck is pretty fast, and if your opponent knows what you're doing, Chandra can be a big surprise. Also, it can give you extra spells, extra mana, and the option to destroy a creature with a toughness of 4 or less. Also, that emblem is just ridiculous. I'm sure if you get that, you're going to win a lot of games. Like I said, all these are great sideboard options. I'm sure there's a couple more. One thing I forgot to mention was that Active Treason can also be replaced with Hijack, which was released in Kaladesh. I don't have any copies of Hijack, but if you go up against vehicles, that will probably be an excellent card, and likely better over Active Treason because you can also take, I believe, it's any artifact, it's not just vehicles, so if you go up against more artifact decks, you can take their Paradox Engine. And that's the deck. So if you enjoy red decks or burn decks or any other sort of deck and you're trying to get into Frontier, this is a great deck to play. I honestly don't think the entirety of this deck is that expensive. I think it's really fun. If you've been playing standard for the last few years, I'm sure you'll have a lot of the cards, and even so, most of the cards are either common or uncommon, and best yet, they can even be played in several other formats. Anyway, if you'd like to see more Frontier decks, or have any ideas for this deck, advice is greatly appreciated. If you're new to my channel, please like and subscribe, as it does help get my videos out there, and it is greatly appreciated. Again, my name is Ryu Spectre. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I will see you all next time.